Hi, and welcome to Next Chapter Women, the New Midlife, a real and raw podcast for everyone who's affected by menopause. I'm your host and guide, Joelle Castex. Come with me as we dish on the skinny on menopause, the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual realities that we face every day in life, every day at home, and every day on the job. Let's go. This podcast is my side gig passion project. My career and lifelong passion project for the past, 20 plus years has been the exposure and prevention of childhood sexual abuse. I got into that gig the same way I got into the menopause gig. It happened to me, and I wanted to get help and change the public narrative, and I was sick of hiding. So in this episode, there's going to be a crossover. The average age of disclosure for a survivor of childhood sexual abuse is 52. 52. And that number's coming down a bit, mostly because of the work that survivors and advocates have done to raise awareness and normalize the discussion, but it's still way too late in life. And there's something else happening to survivors in midlife. Their bodies are breaking down. And this isn't just anecdotal. The Kaiser Foundation ACEs, the Adverse Childhood Experiences study, found that survivors of child sexual abuse are far more likely to suffer from degenerative disease, autoimmune disorders, and cancer. And they have a shortened lifespan. That's sucky news if you don't have tools to fix it. Midlife and menopause are pivotal moments, and I want to talk about how to take control of this time and create a healing mindset. You can't heal your body unless you start with your emotional core, and today's guest is going to help us all embark on that journey. Flizanes is an empowerment strategist and the creator of Empowering Minds Network. And focusing on everything from your emotional and mental well-being to your physical health, she helps people remove emotional blocks that are keeping them from success in all areas of their lives. Her courses include strengthening intuition, the law of attraction, which is huge for survivors of abuse, and rewiring your core wound patterns. For people who are stuck, and let's face it, we're all kind of stuck. JJ, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Joelle. Looking forward to connecting the dots for everybody.
Yes. So first, tell us what a core wound pattern is.
Well, first we have to talk about what a core wound is, and then we can go into
we'll start there. Yeah.
Okay. So 3 months before you're born until 7, you don't have a consciousness in your brain. You're running two major brain waves. One is alpha, which is sort of the relaxation state, and the other is theta. And theta is where we create things. Theta is basically hypnosis. And so as a child who is in life in a hypnotic state most of the time, you're forming opinions and ideas and beliefs based on the environment that you're in and your needs. So our need to survive, our need to connect, our need to feel loved and cherished and taken care of. And it's not something that, we can discuss now with a conscious brain ideas, and we can look at things as an observer, and we can decide if that's something we want to believe or not, or we can make a case for why there's another alternative way to interpret something. Well, when you're 5, 6, and 7, you can't do that. So your brain is literally making decisions and being programmed and being downloaded by the adults in your environment, by the whatever's going on in your environment, whether it be your parents, your grandparents, your brothers or sisters, what's happening in the world, what's on the television, what's on the news, what's being played in your household. These are all being downloaded into your brain, and you don't know what they are. So a core wound is something that is a belief system. It's that 88% of your subconscious mind that gets formulated. It's like the basement. And what happens is when we become conscious, and then adults, and even before adults, teenagers, we establish these patterns because they create beliefs. Like whatever happened to you as a child, create a belief. Now you didn't choose that belief; it just happened, and you're not a victim to it. It's just sort of what happens. I don't care how good of a parent anybody is. You have core wounds. Your kids have core wounds. Your parents had core wounds. Your grandkids are going to have core wounds. It's just the game that we decided to sign up for called life when we embodied here on this planet at this time. It's sort of why we're here, to keep expansion happening and to keep consciousness growing. But we have the tools to understand what that is. But most people go through therapy or don't go through therapy and spend a lot of time repressing emotions or outrunning them or suppressing them. And We have pattern after pattern. So somebody who's married multiple times who keeps thinking it's the other first person's fault, or someone who has a disease that's happened several times that thinks it's just the environment. These are situations that got created from a belief system, and we can point those out. I started this work back when I was trying to save my marriage. I actually started my podcast to save my marriage, and I was doing all the things and learning all the things. I'm a super learner. I am a super learner. And I just dove right in and I did everything. I did everything. I mean, are there things that I've learned now that I didn't do? There are, but I really did a lot. Like I'm an overachiever in that way. I could, compare to someone else the things they've done a lot and be like, no, I really took all responsibility for everything I possibly could have contributed in understanding. And one of those things was working with Harville Hendrix on imago therapy. And imago therapy is based on the premise that you choose your partner to heal the wounds of your past. And 100%, when you look at core wounds, you can see the entire pattern from childhood. Every choice you've made, every friend you've had, every thing you've been interested in is all a way to get a need met. And
Okay, I'm going to stop you. You called it imago therapy?
yes, I am AGO. I am
IMAGO.
in the image of.
Okay, got it, got it.
Because the brain recognizes a partner as a energetic duplicate or combination of your parents and says, oh, familiar. This is familiar. I can get what I need from that person, which will fill in the hole that was created by that person. So, right. But there's a whole bunch of problems with that. Of course, there's beautiful things that happen because of that. And there are definite issues that happen because of that. But when I was in imago therapy for a little while, learning the tools, and I waited way too long. That's the one regret I have. I wish I would have learned it a little bit earlier. But there was a core wound exercise in that. And that exercise by myself, without my ex-husband, changed my life and stopped a pattern that I knew wasn't working, that intellectually I understood. I could see it, I could talk about it, but I wouldn't stop it. And then all of a sudden, with this one exercise, boom, the awareness shifted everything. And then from there, I've just been working with clients on it. I've built an entire business around it. And I told Harville Hendrix recently, I said, by the way, and he's can't wait to see it. I can't wait to show it to him. So core wounds are the beliefs that you may not know you have. And I'm going to take a stab and say, I believe that 90 to 95% of the population has no idea what their core wounds are. Because if you did, then you wouldn't be in therapy for 10 years because you'd get to the root of it. You'd know how to fix it. And then you'd move on. Like you'd change. You wouldn't continue time after time to try to heal something that's been going on forever because you don't even know what it is. That's the beauty of it. It's like having a map to what the real problem is. It's the root. And if we don't ask, and a lot of therapists don't do that, and therapy situations don't have you look at core wounds. I mean, they may say you might have abandonment issues. Okay. Is that a core wound? It is. Is it your top three, one of your top three core wounds? I don't know. Have you done any core wound work to understand what those beliefs are? So to me, it's very freeing when you can have a system that can identify the real problem, like the bottom, the root. So core wound patterns from that become how we compensate and how we react. How if something happens and I've interpreted one of my core wounds is being devalued. So if my subconscious, if I get triggered, what's happened is that I've interpreted something in my life, somebody's behavior or someone's reaction has devalued me. It happens in a split second, and I'm now triggered. So that's the start of the circuitry. You get triggered because the wound is triggered, and then you have the way that you react emotionally, and then you have the thing you do to react to it, whether it be towards it or against it, whether you rebel or you perform for love. I mean, there's many different ways and that's like the circuit. So that's a core wound pattern of this is what I do every time this wound gets triggered. I feel this and then I react like this. And that's what a pattern is.
Okay, there's so much here to pick apart. I mean, it's because especially, the community here is women in midlife. And I mean, it's really the time. Okay, so your kids are a little bit more grown. Maybe your marriage, a lot of death and divorce or reevaluating your marriage or having a new phase in your marriage. And all of a sudden you have this time to look at, oh, why am I acting the way I am? Why do I want to keep acting the way I am? So you said one of your core wounds was being devalued. What are some other examples of core wounds that people might have?
Abandoned, ignored, smothered, made to feel guilty. Yeah, I have a whole list of them. I can read them. I mean, they all could be broken down into this, and they're all versions of, not feeling good enough. Give me one
Yeah.
second and I'll pull this up. because it'd just be easier to read them because okay. So neglected, abandoned, rejected, smothered, shamed, made to feel guilty, excluded, ostracized, used, dominated, ignored, suppressed, disapproved of, controlled, devalued, found defective, depleted, deprived, separate.
Oh my God. So, I mean, I'm just thinking of myself. I can, granted, I haven't done any of the work, but I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna count those because it's like, for example, when I said this is cross-section of child sexual abuse, the reason I was targeted was because I was missing things. I was older when I was abused. I was in my teens. And so I could just see that the abuse wasn't a core wound. It was the pattern coming from the core wound. Am I making sense there? Is
Yes,
that
yes. I have a good friend. We did back-to-back sessions on her podcast. One was me explaining it, and the other was me kind of trying to work through it with her on the show, which I told her I didn't know how that was going to work out because you have to do this exercise. It's a written exercise and we extract the data from it. So she had a very traumatic thing happen with her parents. Her parents died when she was 25. So she can't really remember anything except her parents dying. Like life really shifted and she felt abandoned at that moment. But I said, but that's not a core wound. That's a trauma. But I want to go back a little further. But there was a block there because of the trauma that happened at 25 of being an orphan all of a sudden. So it was hard for her to go back without doing the exercise and really taking some time to, be intuitive and to go back into the subconscious and try to have some memories. I mean, she had some memories, but there was also a block to even looking at some of the things that maybe you don't want to see because again, you're trying to protect that. Oh, my parents died and they were wonderful and they were great. I'm like, they weren't perfect. I promise you they weren't perfect. And I'm sure you didn't interpret everything perfectly. Even if you had a lot of us had happy childhoods. We have wonderful parents that we love, but everybody created a wound, I promise. And it doesn't have to, you don't have to blame them or feel bad about it, but you have to own what your subconscious made their behavior and words and actions to mean because it does mean something. And it took me a while to get there, to flip the switch, if you will, to even look at my parents in that way, to say what messages did I get from them that are still affecting me today and how I act and react in the world. And once you start to dive down there, you're like, oh, but you can't change it unless you understand what it is. So yeah, you're right in that the trauma, that their wounds were there, which might have put you in alignment maybe with some of the trauma. Like if you felt devalued, if you felt ignored, possibly subconsciously, this could be an invitation to, that, oh, no one's going to notice her, or this is and I'm not saying you called it in necessarily in this lifetime, of course, right?
yeah.
I believe that there's a dualistic, in when I'm here in this physical body, I get to control how I think, what I talk about, how I react, how I interpret things. Everything within my mind and my brain is mine. However, there's a bigger sort of section of I also believe that we incarnated with a plan and we had a plan to have pain because that's how we grow. We have to get over something. That's how we expand this consciousness because it's amazing. We can look back over the last 30 to 40 years and you can see a dramatic difference in the kinds of conversations we're having today versus and the things that we care about versus the things that our grandparents talked about or cared about. And part of that is this really fast expansion that's happening. And it's because of we're coming in and we're wanting to learn and to grow. And that means we have to have contrast, and that's pain.
So tell me a little bit about how this wound healing process works. But you don't have to do it on me. But just well, how does it work when you're working with a client or someone who's struggling with this core wound pattern?
So I created a program called Rewiring Your Core Wound Patterns, and that's kind of where it happens. And it's a small group coaching program that is like 8 people, and it's sick. Well, it's 3 months, but I do a 6 month. I prefer, and I tell everyone that it's really going to be 6 months because it's going to take, first of all, and it's normally everyone that gets done with 6 months is like, what's next? Because they understand, they see the momentum. And I've lived like this for however long, 30, 40, 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, even in some cases. And I now finally feel like a new person and I don't want this to end. And I want to keep setting these new neural pathways so that I can keep living out this experience that I'm having right now. So first we'd identify, I've created what's called a core wound map. And this is new to Harville and Helen, who I interviewed for like the 8th time a couple months ago. And that's sort of where, because they have a new book out called How to Talk to Anyone About Anything. And definitely one of the best. I mean, I've been with them for years at this point, but it was one of the best conversations. And in it, we're going into why people don't dialogue and why they only monologue. And Harville's explaining something, and I'm right there. And I said, okay, well, can I explain why I think that happens? He's like, sure. And I went into the core wounds, and he was like, you really get this. I said, oh, I built an entire business around your core wound core wound exercise. And he was like, well, I want to see that. And I call it the core wound map, because we're all going to be different. And even if I can extract out a few basic parts of the map for everyone as a whole, what you do to heal your wounds is specific to you, is specific to your patterns, is specific to your belief systems. So there are three parts to the map. The first is identifying the circuit, is what I call it. So the circuit would be, what are the top three core wounds? And then what's my emotional response, and what's the reaction that I have? So for instance, for me, when I feel devalued, I will feel sad and angry, and I will withhold or punish. Okay, so that is one of the things that I will do. So catching it and seeing it is how you start to change it. Now, you're not going to catch it like immediately at first. You have to be able to identify it first. See, some people, when they have a negative reaction and a trigger, they go down a spiral, they create this momentum, and it's habitual, because they'll get triggered and be like, oh my God, and they catastrophize. Oh my God, this thing and that thing. And all of a sudden they have all this energy around a very simple, like, oh, that was just your core wound pattern. Like, no, this isn't a big deal. You don't have to make it more than it is. It's you being triggered. The wound of being abandoned got triggered. And now this is how you feel, and this is how you react. And when you start to see it, it desensitizes it a little bit. It takes the intensity level down. So understanding the circuit is also key in understanding that it's going to run its course. When the trigger gets triggered, right, in the brain, you're going to go through a certain pattern. And as long as you let it go through the circuit, it's going to be over. And then you're going to be back into your conscious brain. But if you know not to react the same way you always react, now we can shift a little bit and create a new neural pathway and start to change this circuit. So the second thing that I do after we know what the wounds are is I ask people, and this is why, again, this can't be done as a huge group. There is an individual piece to this. So let's say, give me one of what do you thought yours was, Joelle? I'll walk you through this piece.
Oh, shame.
Okay. So then I would say to you, give me 3 ways you shame yourself?
Oh God. Yeah. Every day in my life, I say, gosh, I'm a bad person.
Okay. So negative self-talk.
Yeah. Negative self-talk, lack of worthiness.
Which
is that a different
expressed
one?
Well, how does that get expressed? Like, so so that's a feeling that you have, or a belief that you have, and then what do you do or don't do because of that?
I shut down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So negative self-talk, shutting down.
And at the same time, also overachieving. So
Performing for love.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. See, you got me nailed. Let's say I got the negative self-talk is I think the biggest one. I mean,
Okay.
it's really self-talk. I mean, it goes into imposter syndrome. It goes into so many aspects of my life. Anxiety, fear. It's like the rolled up newspaper that's always waited to, someone's gonna hit me with it kind of thing. So it's all this over-consuming dread. And you said something too about, the energy that you waste when you get triggered. I mean, and that's what I waste energy by swirling and swirling and swirling and swirling, and all this energy is wasted, and then I crash and check out.
So all of those, so for the second section of this map, the reason why it's important for you to take responsibility for knowing how you shame yourself is because if it was just your parents and you treated yourself differently, then it would over time start to lose its power. The reason why it has power is because you believe it and you act on it and you show up in that way. So that's where we have to go, okay, what am I currently doing and repeating all the time that's keeping this core wound very alive? So for you, the negative self-talk would be the first place I'd start. The checking out and possibly leaning in when you need to and ask the questions, or, and you'll know based on your own when it happens, here's what I would normally do. Okay, how do I do the opposite of that? How do I change this pathway so that I can react differently? And then, so we have to take responsibility for that, because in order for us to change and create new neural pathways, we have to stop doing the thing that keeps it strong. It's like exercise. If you are a runner and you want to start being a biker, you're not going to go train at the gym by running to bike. You're going to change how you train. You're going to start biking more not running more,
Yeah.
right? It's the same idea with how we show up for ourselves, is we have to change the way we show up so that we can change how we react and how we feel and what we attract. So then the third part of the map is sort of the what, so because there's two methods of my thinking when I created this. The first one was, again, first we have to identify what the circuit is and what the wounds are and how do I act and react and how do I feel. And then I need to take responsibility for how I contribute to keeping it alive. Okay, check, and then do that differently. And then I don't want to just wait around until I'm triggered. What proactive thing do I need to stretch myself into in order to create a new belief? So if the belief is I was shamed, then how do you celebrate? What's the opposite of shame to you? Love, accepted, celebrated?
Yeah, but acceptance, acceptance.
All right. So what do I proactively do that's going to tell my brain that I really accept myself? And what does that look like? The part of the rewire that is the most important that I have implemented with clients over the years, because I keep getting smarter and smarter clients, which helped me to develop this, because I thought, all right, you guys have been in therapy, you've done the work, you listen to podcasts, yourself, you read books, you're self-aware. So the change isn't going to be some big aha moment of, oh my God, I had no idea. It's going to be in the moment to moment, how you show up in the world, how we're interpreting, what we're choosing. And so because we don't want to wait till we get triggered to just do it differently, we have to stretch out of our comfort zone. I don't know if Doug ever told you, or if we didn't publish the show, we did record, but a year ago, literally a year and like 2 weeks ago, we rented an RV and we took two of our five cats at the time with us on this RV trip. And this is my definition of neuroplasticity, or my illustration for anyone who doesn't understand how neuroplasticity works. So the cats, at first, when they got into the RV, were like, cool, what's this? Because, it's Domino and Luna. She's 12 and Luna's 11, and they're very social cats. And, they're looking around, they're interested, they're bopping their head around. Okay, then I shut the door and we take off. Doug turns the ignition on and we start to drive away. Okay, holy terror. The two of them rip into the bed. Their heads are underneath the pillow. They're shaking. They're frozen in fear because they have no idea what's happening, because they have new sounds, new sensations, new environment. Everything is new except me and Doug, but they can't even comprehend that because they're just reacting for their survival. Once we stop the RV, they kind of start to relax and they get up and they're walking around again. Now they're eating and they're going to the bathroom and looking out the window. And this happened every day. When we start the RV, they'd get afraid. When we stop the RV, they'd relax. But what happened over the 5 days is they got more and more relaxed the entire time because their brain adapted. Their brain recognized that this thing that happened to them, because what may be funny, and I'm sure you know this and can understand this, but a lot of people don't really understand it until they're in it, until they're doing it. There are things that we as humans need in our lives. And if there's time, I will give some tools for how to get your needs met, especially in midlife. Because if you haven't learned it yet, because no one taught you, because no one's teaching this, this is now the time to reclaim yourself and get that health back and the vitality and the expression that that we're all so desperately needing and looking for in so many ways. But the thing with the cats was that their brain adapted. And when you do something, even a simple thing, I mean, I have a mastermind, and it's like putting on your first webinar, doing your first summit, doing your first video. Oh my God, last year one of my clients took her 2 weeks. She cried every day to do a 15-second video. Was like, you would think someone in her family had died. And it's not her, it's the average person. We all have these ridiculous fears of things that really aren't going to hurt us. But our brains aren't like logical. It's emotional. It's this idea of being seen, the idea of being shamed, the idea of being judged that scares us to our core. And it stops us. So in order for us to create a new neural pathway of a different belief, we have to break those. We have to stretch beyond them. We have to do the thing that scares us. Even if you think you're going to throw up or pee yourself, you do it anyway, because then the brain goes, oh, well, that didn't kill me. So the next time you go to do it, the fear is like 50%. And then the third time you do it, the fear is like 10%. And then the fourth time you do it, you're like, this isn't a big deal at all. What was I thinking? But you can't get there by logically thinking about it. You actually have to stretch into taking the action beyond your comfort zone, which most people aren't going to do on their own. because let's be honest, who wants to feel uncomfortable? Everyone does what they need to suppress their feelings so that they aren't uncomfortable. I mean, we are a society full of suppression and suppressed feelings and ignoring and abandoning ourselves emotionally all the time. We're on Facebook or Instagram trying to be happy when half people are miserable and they're putting on a face, they're performing. So we do not have tools, nor do we understand how emotions work. And if we did, we'd be a lot happier and a lot freer and a lot healthier.
Do you think social media has contributed to the lack of people or the people's lack of being able to address and change their emotions and make changes with neuroplasticity?
Yeah, because it's still not teaching you anything. Right now, it's just now there's a camera on you. Right, you went from living in your solitude of not having anyone see what you're doing to posting everything that what you're drinking today, what you're what where you went to dinner every day of the week. Like, we're posting these things, but we have to look at why we're doing them. We're doing them to feel accepted, to feel connected, but we're doing it in a disconnected way. We're not being honest. We're not, and not that I'm saying everyone should put out negative things on social media, and because it's still asking for attention in a non, like, you're not actually helping yourself. So I'm not going to blame social media. I'm going to blame the fact that we had no tools and now we added a camera and now people do. It's like when people say, well, money makes you a bad person, having a lot of money. And I say, no, money makes you who you are. So either that person who didn't have money before was that same kind of douchebag before, but now that they have a lot of money, they're a douchebag because they're telling you they're a douchebag, right?
Yeah.
But a
They can
nice
afford
person,
to tell you they're a douchebag. Yeah.
right? Money doesn't change you. Money just shows you what's real for you. That's it. It's not, if you're a good person or whatever that means. I don't mean to judge like that because that means different things to different people. But yeah. So
Something else that you've brought up numerous times throughout this conversation is the concept of responsibility and taking responsibility. Tell me in your words what you see is taking responsibility as far as, like, especially with core wound patterns and things like that.
well, we can take it in an emotional responsibility. And I actually, if you like, I can teach a tool, and I have a tool that I can give everybody for free to help them take responsibility. So there are two ways to look at life. I'm sure there might be a third, but I don't know what it is yet. And I've been teaching this for a while. So if you have another one, you can share me. You can tell me. One is that stuff just happens. You have nothing to do with it. I have nothing to do with that thing that just showed up in my life. And that would be considered victim mentality. And I understand that we can be victimized. Yes, we can be victimized. But when we say that I have no control or influence over anything that happens in my life, then you have no power. It's literally powerlessness. So, and it is a choice to believe that if you can see in the world that some people don't believe that. Maybe it wasn't a choice up until now, but now that you're hearing it, maybe you're like, oh, well, I didn't realize there was another choice. Well, the other choice is to go beyond and take responsibility for literally everything. Everything you possibly can think of, even how people react to you. Now, that's a double-edged sword there because it's them and you can't control them. However, where you vibrate and what you believe will attract like-minded things. So there is something to say about going out in the world and having people react in a negative way everywhere you go. Well, it's you. So what are you pulling out of people that's negative? Maybe you're an angry person who's really looking for an outlet. And so you're attracting this negative response out of people because it's what's in alignment with them. But if you take responsibility for everything, then you have something to do about it. It gives you choice. It gives you power. And if you don't have power, then you're just sort of, you're just a victim. And no one will ever feel happy, peaceful, loved, or safe if you're a victim. So that's why I want to flip it to their side. Now, does that mean you feel badly about things that you've attracted? No, there's no shame in this. There's zero shame. It's just information. It's looking at it from an observer standpoint of saying, and being curious, why did this happen? What's going on inside of me that I'm in alignment with this stuff? And sometimes it's as simple as because I need the push to take the action that I'm too afraid to take. So I'm being shown the mirror of that if I stay here any longer, I'm not going to get the thing that I want because I'm not in the frequency of receiving that. So one of the exercises that I teach in all my courses, and I've taught on my show many times, and it's a very simple but not easy exercise because it's not how people are taught to think or to assess things. But if you can get this, and literally, this is the only thing you need. Forget your core wounds, even though that's super important. And it frees people for life to understand this stuff. If you can really get this, you are more than 50% there. Like if there was one tool that I could say could change your life forever, if you really mastered it, it is this one.
Okay, give it to us.
Okay. So this comes from the work of Dr. Marshall Rosenberg, who wrote Nonviolent Communication. Hate the title, always have. Did not help me read the book or learn about it for many years because I resisted it because I did not consider myself a violent communicator, right? So one day I may rewrite it because I've been saying that. I've been threatening that for 15 years now. Because it does. It just this is so important. It would change our planet. Literally, this one exercise. So I have this, and I don't have this on my website readily available. It's jjflizanes.com/feelings list, feelings with an S, feelings list. Because if I give it away and people don't know what to do with it, then you won't know what to do with it. So I have to teach it first, which is why I put on a little hidden link for people that are interested in downloading it.
And
so
we'll have that in the show notes for people who are interested. Yeah.
And when you do download it, print 20 copies, put it everywhere, and work with 5 of them every day. Like maybe task yourself to do this exercise 5 days in a row by writing on it. All right. So there are 3 questions that you're going to ask yourself anytime you're having a negative emotion. I recently had a client in a program I've called Date Your Body. And shout out to Mandy.
You said date your body?
Yes.
Nice. Okay.
And Mandy did a brilliant thing. She actually did this in reverse. She thought, I'm really happy right now. How did I get this happy? And so she went to the list and went, what need did I get met that's causing me to be happy? I'm like, that was brilliant. Now that's a 1 in 99%, time this is going to happen. The majority of this is going to be when you're feeling negative emotion. People aren't going to necessarily want to know why they feel happy. They're just going to enjoy feeling happy. They're just going to milk being happy. Just be happy. All right. So you're going to use this exercise in 2 ways. One, when you're having a negative emotion, or when you're having no emotion and you're confused and you don't know what's going on. Because a negative emotion is an indicator of one thing. Well, it's an indicator of more than one thing, but generally speaking, it's an indicator of a need that's not being met. I'm also going to say it's the indicator of a need that's not being met, and that's your perception. So for instance, do you know your love language, Joelle?
No, I don't.
Do you know okay, so then you wouldn't know your husband's if you don't know. How do you, when you want to give somebody or show somebody love, what's the first thing you want to?
Oh, like the general love. I thought this was like some kind of like official love. Like, oh, I take care of people. I'm a caretaker.
Acts of service. Okay. Yeah. So you're an acts of service. And when your husband wants to show you he loves you, what does he do?
It's more physical touching.
Touch. Okay. All right. So in the case of love languages amongst couples or family members, because everybody has one, and you, like for me, mine is quality time. Well, my mother's is gifts and my dad's is words of affirmation. So when they choose not to come visit me, I can take that personally, even though I understand it and I don't, but it makes me sad because quality time is my love language. And I don't want to go there. So that's because I prefer California over Pennsylvania. So when it comes to a need not being met in a couple, sometimes it's as simple as, again, need not being met can just be perception. I've had couples where the husband is acts of service and the wife was touch, and she didn't feel loved. He doesn't love me. He doesn't want me. He doesn't desire me. And she made a whole story about that and decided to get really upset about that and had an affair because she didn't feel loved because he didn't touch her. But yet he was providing all the meals. He was doing all the grocery shopping. He was cooking for her. He was making sure things were clean. And it wasn't until she understood this concept of this, her need was for love and affection, but she wasn't getting it in the way that she wanted it, but she was getting it and she wasn't able to receive it. So I say air quotes for the need not being met because you may think your need is not being met, but you might be getting it. You're just not in alignment with receiving it. So starting at the beginning. So the first question you're going to ask yourself is, what am I feeling? So I'm obviously going to be in a negative emotion. What am I feeling? Now on this sheet, there's 100 different feeling words. 100.
That is so important because people don't know what they're feing. Heck, I don't know what I'm feeling half the time. So that's fabulous.
I asked Doug on a hike the other day. I said,
oh, and for those of you who don't know, Doug is JJ's boyfriend, and he's also the producer of this podcast. So, okay.
And he's on the first episode interviewing Joelle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I asked him, I said, what are you feeling right now? This is before I had a live event a couple weeks ago. So it was before that event. And he had to stop for a second. And he was like, I don't know. I had to stop and think about it because we aren't always connected, depending which side of your brain you use more of. If you're in a left brain dominant, then you're probably a little detached from your right brain. So you're probably not actually even in your body very much. And that can cause a lot of problems. So learning to sense where and how you feel and identify it is important. So for this other reason. So under the category of mad, there's many of them, but what's the difference between if I say I'm irritated or I'm enraged?
Oh, it's just totally different degrees of anger. I mean,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Irritated, you're like, okay, cool. How are you okay? Enraged, you're stepping back. You're
Yeah.
like, I'm going to move away from you right now because enraged means you could blow it any minute right now. So we have to be able to fine tune and the identification of what's going on with us so we know how to proceed. So the first step, the first question is, what am I feeling? So you're going to identify no more than two or three. You really want to narrow it down to two or three feelings because then it would just be easier that way. All right. The second question you ask on the bottom half of this sheet is are the needs. Needs. Let's talk about needs for a second. So, need does not mean needy. Need does not mean weak. Need does not mean stupid or dependent or anything like that. We all have 86 basic human needs. Everyone, every single person has all of these 86 basic human needs. Now, specifically to your audience, Joelle, and to you and all of your friends and people in midlife that are, are confused about symptoms and feelings and all the things, right? Separate from the physical body that can create some of these symptoms and some of these feelings out of frustration and lack of hormones. I would love everyone to consider printing one of these sheets out and literally just, I do this with so many people, just circle the needs. And I'm going to read some to you right now.
Okay.
And if you want to pick out some, you don't have to, but I mean, there's a lot. So I'm just going to kind of bounce around through them. So we all need acknowledgement, celebration, clarity, growth, hope, mourning, understanding, freedom, space. Oh my God, so many women need space. And they don't take it. And then they wonder why they're have
And,
migraines.
and they don't know how to ask for it. Yeah.
And they don't know how to ask for it. Well, just take it. You don't gotta ask for it. Just tell people I'm taking space and then figure out whatever they need and get their needs met and then go take your space. You have to ask permission to take space. It's your life. That's if you have to ask permission to take space, you need freedom. The deeper issue is that you need some freedom. All right. Honesty, to be seen, to be heard, to be known and to know, trust, belonging, compassion, consideration, respect, obviously air, hydration, rest, safety, rest. People need rest. Touch, fun. People need more fun. Joy. We need way more joy. Cooperation, support, ease, flow, harmony. Okay. So those are just some of the needs on this list. And I'll start up somebody off who has no idea what they need and just say, well, just circle all the needs that aren't being met in your life that you care to have met. Now, if someone doesn't care about beauty, don't circle it. They'll be like, well, I don't have beauty. Well, do you care? I don't. So then don't circle it. Circle what you want that you're not getting. And at least now we'll have a place to start with. How can you feel better? Well, let's start getting your needs met. So step one, what am I feeling? Step two, what need is not being met that's creating this feeling? So if someone doesn't have space, I had a client once, one of my male clients is a personal trainer, and he was a middle brother, and I trained the oldest brother and then him and this younger brother. He was a drug addict for his whole life, and he was in program after program, and Greg would take care of him. And Greg was saying, well, I need him to take care of himself. And okay, so that's when you know you're not in responsibility, when your sentence has either you or somebody else's name in it. Like, I need you to, or I need him or her to. We're no longer in self-responsibility, because your need is about your need. Your circumstance will show you what that need is, but your circumstance is not responsible for your need. The people in your life are not responsible for getting your needs met. You are. So when we actually uncovered that he can't control Keith, and Keith has passed on since then, but I said, it sounds like, because he was really stressed. I said, it sounds like you need more fun. He's like, yes, I need more fun. I was like, okay. So really what the need is, because you can't do anything about that guy. You need to be able to say no. You need some space, you need some rest, and you need some fun. So he started going back out to bars and playing guitar, and and he had a great time. And everything kind of shifted because he was making someone else responsible for his happiness. and we can't do that. So step number 3, the last question you ask yourself is, what are the strategies I can take? And it's very important that there's more than one. You don't need to have more than 2, but you need to have more than one. What strategies can I take to get my need met? Now, here's the most important line, that doesn't require anyone else to be different.
Oh, I'll be happy if he does this.
Yes.
I'll have space if he does that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there you have it. There it is. How am I feeling? What need is not being met that's creating this negative feeling? And what strategies can I take to get my need met that does not require anyone else to be different? Now, in the case of intimacy or what's the other one? Companionship, for instance, it just means that so for me, quality time, I just make dates with people that want to hang out with me. That doesn't mean I have to say to one person, you have to spend all of your quality time with me. Like, I can't make one person responsible for that, especially if that person's love language isn't quality time. So if it's important for me to feel like I have companionship, just have many companions. Go after people that, go meet new people, call up your friends or your family that you enjoy spending time with. Go learn about new people that you want to have things in common with if you don't have family or friends that share your interests. So there will be times where you ask someone to participate, but it's not dependent on that one person. And then this will free you up. People will start to feel better because you feel empowered. I mean, that's literally what the definition of empowerment is. How do I empower myself to get my needs met and stop acting like the world owes me anything or that it's going to do it for me?
So, real quick, can you say the link to that page one more time?
jjflizanes.com/feelings list.
Okay. Because this feelings list hits me with all the feels. Because it hits my two audiences square on the nose. So audience one, women in midlife who, I mean, my feelings were always secondary. My needs were secondary. And so I had a hard time even finding, what are my feelings? Why do I do things like emotional eating? What am I feeling? I don't know, but I'm stuffing it with food or so on and so forth. And when then I look at my community of survivors of childhood sexual abuse, they don't know what their feelings are at all. It's even the idea of being within their body, like how do you feel physical pain? Sometimes it's very, very difficult for a lot of survivors. So just by providing a list of feelings, that's a tremendous tool for people because there's nothing harder than to tell it, well, how are you feeling today? Oh, I don't know. But if you give them a list, they have like this amazing tangible tool. And I'm bringing up the responsibility thing again. So, you don't know this. I did a TED talk called The Power of Responsibility. So I'm like totally into this because I think that the more people can escape the cult of victimhood, whether that cult's in their head or in their community or wherever, and take simple responsibility for their lives and their happiness, I mean, the whole world can change. And so this is super powerful. What do you see are, in your clients, what are you seeing as like the trends that aren't being met for a lot of them? What are you seeing people struggling with?
Well, I want to speak to the cross section of what you just mentioned,
Okay.
be it survivors who never felt safe to have feelings or didn't know how to process the feelings that they had. So we numb them, we shut them down, and also the story that comes out of sometimes being victimized that actually prevents you from getting your needs met. Maybe at times there are times where, there are people who I had a client once as a personal trainer who was very obese. She'd gotten some kind of diagnosis. She wasn't like that her whole life, but at one point she became literally unable to move very, very far. She was like super obese. And her son reached out and hired me to train her, and her husband took off and was working from home, and because she was on disability, to like sort of caretake for her. And we bought her a Pilates machine. And I mean, I was there, I don't know how many, I don't know if I was there a full year, but I know I was there close to a year. So let's say maybe 6 to 8 months. And I'm a really good problem solver. And I would like take any angle to get someone to, take one step closer to where they want to go. And it wasn't until about, I don't know, whatever, towards the end, 8, 9 months in, that I realized that she was never going to change because her pain and her situation created an immense amount of attention on her. Her son gave her anything she wanted, bought her anything she wanted. Her husband waited on her hand and foot. She was a queen. And one of the things that women need period, but in midlife, your body asks you to pay attention to this more, and usually life circumstance does too, is that when, because we were taught to put our feelings aside, we were taught to take care of others and, before ourselves. And that's a false model, because then it keeps going. We've taught our children to, your feelings are important. If someone else is screaming around you, take care of them first before you take care of yourself. And so it just keeps perpetuating, which is why it keeps happening. But in midlife, as women and men, and by the way, men have andropause, they go through a menopause too. Men become kings and women become queens. So what happens when you become a queen? You say, no more, no more. I have lived I have lived 50 years of my life for other people. I will do it no more. So what happens is any need that you didn't have met for 50 years is going to come screaming at you as this big issue. And it's really not as big of an issue as it needs to be if you start getting your needs met sooner. It's the things of not feeling you have a voice, feeling you're not important, asking for space, asking for time, asking to be seen and heard, having a voice, having an opinion. These are things that I see a lot of women in menopause who, and forget the symptoms of the physical side, they start to get depressed and anxious because they only identified as mom and wife
Yes.
until about 50. And all of a sudden, they do not know who they are. So this is not a menopause issue. This is you didn't know who you were, and your two titles have now been somewhat retired when your kid doesn't need you right now anymore to the same degree. The mother role has decreased. The wife role is still there, but your husband's maybe starting to retire. And now you're like, who am I? It's really, it's a crisis of self-knowing and purpose is how I see it. And I see it, I've seen it for 25 years. Women coming up into their 50s and 60s, and all of a sudden, if they don't have grandchildren, they're freaking out. They're buying houses to redo them. Like, they are bored. They do not know who they are, and they're depressed because they don't know how to figure that out.
Well, and the show doesn't, I mean, it's the new midlife, because I wanted to focus on that too, because I saw that happening with me. I 3 or 4 years ago, I was telling my husband, like, God, why do I have all this free time? Like, oh, because I'm not, taking kids to school and doing this and everything else. And then I found, a lack of purpose meant of, who the hell is Joelle? And that was very terrifying for me. And I see it far worse for a lot of other women who, I only had one kid. I kind of played it easy. People with multiple children who stayed at home because I worked and stuff. So it's finding, who the hell am I if I'm not mom? Exactly. And, my husband is he's retired and he's pretty self-sufficient. He does the grocery shopping, so I can't complain. And that's enormously difficult. It's a huge change that I see people facing, and I also see it in the workplace. Because and it's something that I've noticed, and I think a lot of this that tool that you just gave us is going to be very, very helpful, because I noticed about 3 or 4 years ago that I felt myself being disappeared in the workplace. And it's like, oh, I'm not the young new shiny toy anymore. I'm just the person they come to all the time and have taken for granted, and I'm forgotten. That was a tough thing to recognize too. And by standing up for myself at times, that was seen as being aggressive or bitchy or menopausal or stuff like that. And so, I mean, I had needs that weren't being met. I just have to figure out how to take responsibility for them and express them in a way that is healthy for me, I'm guessing.
Well, you might have also outgrown your environment.
Yeah.
If you came into it with the idea, which a lot of people do, because it happens, and sometimes it happens, and when it's working, it works well, and when it's not working, it doesn't, it hurts, is when you come into an environment, you're super appreciated and you're valued for what you bring to the table. And then at some point, what you're offering is no longer valued. And then we make it about that they're no longer paying attention to you, and that it's about how they're treating you. And it really isn't about you. It's about that either they've outgrown you or you've outgrown them, or the need has changed. And so we take it personally, and then we react to that. We make it mean something about us. I mean, I just had this happen to me with one of my, like with an offer that I have, like with a group that I have. And I thought, are you kidding me right now? But it's a slap in the face. On one side, I mean, I'm, going gangbusters over here. And then I had something that's been consistent that I just thought would stay consistent, that all of a sudden slapped me in the face with this, no, you need a pivot. You need a change for more than one reason. But I wasn't ready for it. And I was like, oh my God, I was flattened for like 2 weeks. I'm still recovering because I'm like, I wasn't ready for that because I didn't see it coming. Really, I didn't see it coming. And it's fine because now I know I can process. I know what to do to process. I'm not taking it personally, even though I don't like it and it's uncomfortable because it puts me in a little bit of a scarcity for a half a second. But then when I got the clarity, what I needed was clarity. When I got the clarity of the why, now I'm super excited and I can't wait to attract the next level of what is coming. But if we don't change the way we look at things, so Wayne Dyer's quote, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. If you don't change the way you look at things don't change. That's my beef with like traditional talk therapy. Before you and I start recording, because I have 4 slots left in my Date Your Body course that's happening in January. And I just did a whole episode on the testimonials from the last group and sent out an email. And I already got 2 applications this morning. And one woman that I just met with, this is the second time this has happened. She's a therapist. I've been attracted. Like, you asked me in an email, how are you getting around not having credentials after your name for either the health stuff that I'm doing or the emotional stuff that I'm doing? Because what I do works. And the pain of putting that out there, my ex-husband did not want me to grow in a way that would challenge his ability to believe in me. And I didn't want to grow enough to challenge his ability to believe in me. So that was my problem in that situation. And the minute that sort of ended and Doug and I got together, I mean, I could spread my wings, and he keeps encouraging me to spread further, go further, go further. And now all of a sudden I can step into something I know about myself and what I do in the world and say, this is what I do. And then have people not like it or say, you're not a therapist. And at first that would hurt. That's a wound. But then I got over it and now I'm so happy. I'm like, you are damn straight I'm not a therapist. And I am proud of it because I think I am way more effective than most therapists. And I have therapists coming to me who've changed their entire practice because of listening to my show. When you get those kinds of compliments and results because the stuff that you do is effective, I don't care who uses it. I don't care what your title is. I have these thoughts and beliefs. I'm channeling my creativity and my passion and my purpose, and I'm putting it out there, and who wants it, wants it. And who doesn't, doesn't. And I don't need to know who they are. That's the beauty of having a podcast, is that I don't need to know you if you don't like me. Goodbye, go away. I just want to attract those who are like, yes, this resonates, this works, this is changing my life. I want more.
That is so just overwhelming because you again, you touched on so many things. As when you were talking about, so you had this great gig that was going and then it went away and then you were in scarcity. And I'm like, ah, shit, scarcity. That's like that's probably some other big core wound. Because anytime that, I think about, gee, have I outgrown this gig I'm in? Has this gig outgrown me? It's like, oh, but there's scarcity. I need to have it because otherwise, how am I going to pay the bills? Not even thinking like you are, and that maybe it's just my time to grow. Maybe it's my time to spread my wings and leave the nest and, do all those things that big girls do. And I think that is enormously scary for a lot of people, especially in midlife when you're hitting the scarcity thing. When I was 30, I didn't give a shit. I started doing sex abuse advocacy and I lost my job and I didn't care because I was 30, and my rent was nothing and I figured I'd make it work. Now it's like I got a kid in college, I have a mortgage, I have a husband who's retired, and it really what is holding me back in this isn't. I'm okay if I grow, and it's just really coming to terms with that. It's like, it's okay to say goodbye. It's okay to move on. And I think in a lot of ways, when the way you phrased it, the outgrowth is, I think, super duper important.
Well, and it's okay to have fear.
Yeah.
And it's okay to feel sad. I had all those feelings. That's just life. But having a feeling and allowing your feeling doesn't mean anything, except that in this moment, I am sad. And in this moment, I have a fear. That doesn't mean you're a bad person or that you failed or that you're never going to do this again. And we make up all these.
Oh, wait, no, that's always the next step. I'm sad. Therefore, I'm a bad person. And
right. And that's, again, when you understand these frameworks and these tools, then your problems get a lot smaller because you see the patterns. It's just a lot easier to identify. It gives you freedom back. It gives you choice. It gives you an understanding of the natural evolution. We hit upper limits. We can't grow past. So there's one more thing. I don't know when you're publishing this, but I'll say it anyway because I always run them every couple months. But I am doing a free 14-day manifestation challenge. It starts November 1st, and that's the last one of 2024. But I'll do another one, couple of them probably in 2025, and because most people want something they don't have. That's normal. Okay, I want something I don't have. But have you grown into the person who can receive that? Or are you still the same person wanting something outside of your comfort zone that you haven't stretched into yet? And if you don't understand that concept, then this conversation never changes. Oh, I want this thing that, whatever, and usually money or a relationship. I want this thing. Okay, cool. What are you doing to grow yourself into getting it? Well, I'm doing all the same things I do all the time, right? That's called insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So understanding this idea of growth and expansion and frequency is a game changer, but you have to do something. And I'm going to tell you, it's going to come slightly uncomfortable. Each level of an upper limit, each level of growth is going to have that growing pain of this is kind of uncomfortable and scary. And I remember when I have a doctor friend who's very, very well known in the cancer space. And she interviewed me for her doctors. It was the first time on the emotional work. And that same day, I was on another podcaster's Facebook page, and she's way more famous than me in the law of attraction space. Back to back, I had these, and my whole neck went out of whack. I was I was in pain because my physical body was afraid. And I was hitting a huge upper limit because I'm about to be exposed to all these physicians as someone to send their patients to for emotional work in cancer patients. And yeah, imposter syndrome hit me for the second. But then as I was having the conversation with her, of course, I'm like, yeah, of course, this is why I'm the perfect person to do this. Because look at my track record. Look at what I've learned, and my life experience has brought us here today. There is no mistake. There was no randomness. This is all makes sense and all built on each other to get me to today. And I'm a person that believes that everything that we are today is very purposeful. If you don't know the purpose, we can just look back and figure it out. But there's no mistake. There's no randomness to why you're standing in your own physical shoes right now and what you're being called to do or to give. So, I hit that upper limit, but I breathed through it and now I'm past it. So, but still, I get to the next one with the next, big community of people or whatever. But you just do the work. And when you have the tools, you can do the work.
I know you have a hard stop coming up, so we're going to wrap this up. JJ, I cannot thank you enough for this amazing interview. I've learned a ton. I know the community has. I would love to have you come back on because I want to talk more about the law of attraction, which I think is totally fascinating and I think completely relevant to women in midlife. So is there anything we haven't talked about that you want to tell people today?
Not that we're going to cover in 7 minutes. But I'm just going to say, use the feelings and needs list. Most important thing, download it. Literally just start with the exercise. Don't wait to be upset. Just print one, circle all the things, all the needs not being met. And that will show you why you possibly have depression, anxiety, feel overwhelmed, and to have lack of joy. And then you can start problem solving one by one, how to get your needs met. And then for anyone that wants to learn how to strengthen their ability to manifest and have accountability for that, the manifestation challenge happens November 1st, jjflizanes.com/14-day. That's 14DAY. It is free. And if you miss this one, there'll be another one January, February.
That is awesome. All the information we talked about today and links to find JJ will be in the show notes because I know she put out a lot of great materials and sometimes it's hard when you're walking and listening to a podcast to write everything down. So don't hesitate to reach out to her directly or to me at the show with your questions on all things core wound healing and manifestation and all that stuff. So thank you again, JJ, and we will see all of you next time on Next Chapter Women. Thanks for listening to Next Chapter Women, the New Midlife with me, Joelle Castex. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, and give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and everywhere you listen to your favorite content. Also, tell your friends about the show and our guests, because remember, the more we talk about menopause, the better midlife is for everyone, even dudes. You can find contact information and important links in the show notes. Stay tuned, and I'll talk to you next time.